rusty cunt should get to know razor shines.
Yeah.
Could you imagine? Yeah, they got a Heisman house, and they got an all-time Player of the Week house. That's fantastic. So maybe we will add the Player of the Week segment, and every week we'll come up with some great name from the annals of baseball history, because there's some real good ones out there, and I can come up with a few.
Like Coco
Crisp is one of them. Kirk Dressendorfer is one that always comes to mind. Tommy
Yeah,
Casanova.
you might remember this one, being you like college basketball and basketball in itself. How about an old player used to play for the Georgetown Hoyas? His name was Ruben Bunche.
Yeah, Ruben. So anyhow, we've lost track of our entire topic, which is great, and I love that.
Yes.
Not much of a topic here on Regurgitated Wednesdays when we just recap the week. So Denver, Minnesota, they look like the teams probably to beat. Brady coming back this week is a storyline in and of itself. How long do you give Brady before he's loose? And then how big of a day is Chris Hogan going to have?
Well, he hasn't had a big day all year, really. But
nope, hadn't had anybody thrown the ball
one,
since Garoppolo got hurt.
Yeah, I think week one he had a nice touchdown catch, but
he did a little wheel route up the sidelines. It was beautiful.
Yeah,
that's one thing about the Patriots and Tom Brady. They tend to keep it socialist. They tend to spread the wealth pretty equally.
They do.
So,
very difficult to draft fantasy players in those teams.
And they got that guy out there named Malcolm Mitchell, and I recall
wide receiver
seeing
from
him
Georgia.
have some pretty decent games in preseason, and then obviously with Georgia. I wonder if he's going to fit into their future game plans.
I think he is. I think that he's somebody that Belichick likes quite a bit, and he's going to be one of those guys that'll work into it. Amendola won't be there forever. He won't be healthy
Belichick
forever.
likes to stash some of those players. He doesn't want to show his full hand ever.
Right. It's right, but there's some guys out there, and I don't want to keep coming back to the Raiders, but there's a lot of these smaller players that fit that Wes Welker ilk, and you see like Adam Humphries in Tampa, who is another fantasy player who is a number 3, might not be a bad receiver going forward, depending on which Jameis Winston you get.
Adam Thielen.
I wanted to bash Winston a little bit because he looked like absolute shit against Denver.
Well, that's kind of.
I don't know. I'm assuming neither one of you guys being.
A team like Denver, that defense is just.
They're going to make a lot. They're going to make a lot of people look bad.
Mm-hmm.
They are, but that was a bad loss for Tampa to get this season started with a new head coach and a second-year quarterback at 1-3. You're in trouble. You got Carolina on a Monday night coming up next week. That's a game that if they don't come out of there 2-3, they're in all kinds of trouble. 1-4 is a real tough way to start your season. But who else? Who sucks? Who's drafted number 1 overall next year?
Me.
Well, yeah, you.
You're asking who the first pick in next year's fantasy draft?
Yeah, I know that's ultra premature, but I'm just looking down at some of the selections from last week and some of these teams that.
I mean, next year it's too hard to tell if this at this juncture, because we're gonna have some random reg. I mean, it probably should. It should be Le'Veon Bell. Granted, he doesn't get involved, stays healthy, doesn't get involved in another one of his little things off the field. But that's no guarantee. But if those things, I know it's a big if, but if those things play, I don't see why he's not in that offense. I mean, that kid, as long as he stays on the field, is about to be treacherous to the defense.
You got to think Antonio Brown is still in the top 3
for sure.
He's had one maybe bad ball game, but I think that whole team against Philly did not show up. So.
Yeah, and he had a handful of games last year. He had 5 games where I think he was under 60 yards with no scores, but then he had a couple where he just exploded. So
I think one guy that could maybe get into the conversation would be Melvin Gordon. Only issue that I have right now with him through the first 4 weeks is he seems to be touchdown dependent.
He is.
He's gotten a couple of those 1-yard bursts that kind of pad his numbers.
Couldn't find the end zone last year. Didn't know where it was.
No, he's got, 5, 6, 7 touchdowns this year already?
6.
Something to that respect.
I believe he had 2 again last week.
Yeah. Now, if he ever becomes a quality running back where he takes off like we saw Gurley do last year from 40, 50, 60 yards out, then you might get him in the conversation. But right now he's sitting as a touchdown-dependent running back.
He is. Danny Woodhead being out is helping him out of the backfield a little bit, but I don't think he's the best pass catcher in the world either. Mm-hmm. It doesn't look like it anyhow. I think running back situation all around the NFL is a little bit iffy because they're just coming into the season. I never believed Gurley was this clear-cut ace. I didn't want to jump on Peterson because of his age, especially in the first round. It's scary. I think David Johnson might be a guy that's in the conversation. But, Joey, you're right. Le'Veon Bell's a superstar.
It's something I have not seen. That type of I'm not saying he's there yet, but he has that Marshall Faulk, LaDainian Tomlinson all-purpose potential where you can put him at receiver, he's running back. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like to game plan for him when he's on the field.
No, he's something special. He changes things. I feel bad that D'Angelo Williams might get lost in the shuffle because he's still got a lot of good gas left in the tank.
Yeah, he's a good change of pace. They're gonna use him. They have so many weapons. That must be a fun job for Todd Haley. You have so many weapons to play with.
It's a dangerous.
It probably clears everything up and that's not like you're the St. Louis Rams with Case Keenum. I don't know who their offensive coordinator is, but that's a hell of a time. He probably pulls his hair out and has many sleepless nights trying to figure out how he's going to get this team in the end zone.
How about the poor guy who drafted Jared Goff? You think he's sleeping comfortable? How about that poor asshole who sat there in front of Jeff Fisher and said, "This is the guy, coach." That kid can't sniff the field. Jack, tell me, how many quarterbacks have we seen? How many rookie or second-year quarterbacks have we seen that have played this year that aren't named Jared Goff? 6, 7?
Yeah, and there's been an awful lot of good football being played by those rookies.
That's
and they've had success, too.
Yeah, somebody missed the call on him, and Tommy, I think you believe what is Jeff Fisher's take on that? Does Jeff Fisher want to go with Carson Wentz?
I think that earlier in the summer that had surfaced, that it wasn't exactly his choice to go with Goff, but I think it had a little bit to do with leaning in the direction of this kid is a Cal kid and live the Los Angeles Rams. There may have been a political influence.
In the world.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, he's California, but still, might as well be in a different state. The Berkeley, Northern California compared to Southern California was Los Angeles. So that was like 5 hours away by car. It might as well be in another state.
Sure, but who knows? Who knows what Kroenke and all those guys were? I don't see Jeff Fisher being a guy who takes a lot of shit from anybody at all, ever. I happen to like Jeff Fisher quite a bit because I see a lot of myself in him. We're both very mediocre.
Jeff Fisher, Joey Peeps was not even born yet, I don't believe, but Jeff Fisher was one heck of a defensive back in the NFL.
Yeah, he was a thumper.
I heard he was a special teams warrior.
Yeah, he was.
He was special.
He was a good player.
Yeah.
I think he's a great coach. He just has not been fortunate enough to have a good quarterback since Steve McNair.
Well, so back to the topic of the biggest disappointment in the draft. Well, I know we mentioned Gurley. I know we mentioned Peterson.
The draft.
We could look at Joey's roster, I would imagine.
I was going to say, I'm throwing knives at pictures of Jeremy Langford.
But you got guys that spent early picks on the DeAndre Hopkinses of the world, the Gronkowskis of the world, Sammy Watkinses of the world.
Yeah, there's DeAndre Hopkins. I took him, I believe, 11th.
How about Jamal Charles? I mean, what's going to happen with him?
You're going to find out next week.
Yeah.
You're going to find out next week. I think Spencer Ware's a pretty good player.
Yeah. How about those Thomas Rawls owners that went out there and spent a second or third round pick on him?
How about in June, he was in the top 10.
How about a guy from Oakland that's barely sniffing the field anymore these last couple of weeks by the name of Latavius Murray? There's another name we could probably add to our list.
Is Latavius?
Latavius. Mm-hmm.
he scared the shit out of me back in the spring. And towards the end of last season, I did not like the way he took hits. He exposed the football. He coughed it up in third down situations. There was a lot of things he did that I just didn't love. And I think that Jack Del Rio's got a soft spot for this DeAndre Washington and Jalen Richard.
Yeah. And I think you touched on the fact that Latavius Murray may be in a contract year this year, so I don't think the Raiders want him to shine. I think they want to ship him out.
They do not. They don't want to pay him, and I wouldn't want to give him big money either. I just don't think he's that good of a running back. I think at UCF he probably did pretty well against mediocre talent. NFL's a different place. He can't take hits. He coughs the ball up. He scares the shit out of me. But he's got to be a fantasy disappointment. So is his counterpart, Amari Cooper, so far.
Yeah, Crabtree has outshined him. And here again, some of these early season prognosticators made that clear, that just watch what happens, because Crabtree is going to be the better draft pick, the quality draft pick where you may spend a second or third rounder on Cooper when you can steal Crabtree later on, and he's going to have the bigger year.
And I have Crabtree in 3 of my 4 leagues. I really thought that he was the better receiver last year. He got more looks. He seems to have a lot more Derek Carr's faith. Crabtree's a better player. How about guys like Marcus Mariota? Who would you rather have right now if you're an NFL franchise? Would you rather have a healthy starting Josh McCown or Marcus Mariota?
Mariota.
How about a healthy Josh McCown or a healthy Case Keenum?
Can I take a pass?
That's right. See, I think Mariota's got all the upside going forward because he's younger and all those things. But I mentioned it that way just to get you to think about Case Keenum and to realize that Josh McCown is not a bad football player. And with him, the Cleveland Browns may win 4 games.
Well, what I've noticed in the last 4 games is such a huge difference with Derek Carr. And is this his 3rd year?
This is it.
In the league. Okay,
yep.
We had spoken earlier about the Browns playing 3 quarters and not being able to close out the 4th quarter. They've been in games this year. If you recall, our Oakland Raiders, same boat. The last 2 years would be competitive. That 4th quarter, they were just blown out. And after watching Derek Carr bring them back up the field against Baltimore Sunday and the pinpoint passes he was throwing, I truthfully believe he is the real deal.
Yeah.
That throw was, I was telling Tommy, that throw was big time. In that moment especially when the game is on the line, this is where you're a franchise, this is where you earn your money in those situations. And he threw an absolute dime against a team that, I've been saying that's overrated, but hey, no Monday morning quarter, but they're still 3-0. They were a 3-0 team on the road, and the Raiders were coming across the country. That was a nice win for them, and especially for Derek Carr in his young career.
And this is a guy that last year could not throw that pass.
He hit Cooper once, I believe, against the Bears in a game they lost to the Bears, and it was back of the end zone, just an up and drop. It was about getting air underneath it, and now he's dialed in a couple times with that throw.
The Bears.
He's improved. He's a better player than he was last year, and I think that they say that between your 1st and 2nd year in the NFL at the quarterback position is when these guys tend to show the most growth. But between the 2nd and the 3rd year is when they start to really polish, and they understand intricacies and they understand how to get around things. Yeah, it's impressive, man. There's a lot of good young talent in the NFL, but what happens if you're the Titans and you're looking at Marcus Mariota, you're the Bucs looking at Jameis Winston, and you're wondering, well, what am I going to be looking at in 3 years? Am I going to look at Derek Carr, or am I going to be looking at a Ryan Tannehill? That's
a good point. I think there's plenty of optimism for Jameis Winston, and I think also for Mariota. The problem is their teams are not very good. Derek Carr had his struggles when it came over, but the Raiders have built a team around him.
Yeah, they have.
You're looking at
it's a big difference.
You're looking at Andrew Luck, who's a great talent. No doubt about it. But look at the team around him. It's a bad reflection on him, and really Luck has to do too much. And they don't want – what the Colts are really in jeopardy of doing is they're going to turn him into a Tony Romo, a guy who has to put the whole game on his shoulders. You don't bother building a team around him. until later on in his career, then he's going to get hit too much. What's that?
Never mind. I was just going to bring up the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott.
Yeah, he's going to get hit too much. He's going to be put in these situations towards the end of the game where he's going to have to carry too much load. He's going to make mistakes. And yeah, if you would have built a team around this kid, you'd have something very special. But